Oh, college football nation. We are back. We are in mid-season form. The show is hot. We're coming heaters every week, and I'm excited for another. Dave, how you doing tonight?
Dude, I'm pumped. I'm watching a little Phillies in the background, but getting ready for NCAA. Huge football weekend. A lot of, last week had those classic top 10 matchups. We got a couple more this week, too. And you even got some on the fringe of top 10s with Clemson, Syracuse. There's so many ranked matchups. I can't wait. A lot of good games. Joel, let's fire away again because we are hot.
I couldn't agree more. Even outside of a DFS perspective, it's going to be a fun weekend of games to watch. I mean, there's just some good quality games like the Clemson Syracuse game. I don't even love it from a DFS perspective, but it's going to be entertaining. It's two good teams, two fun teams to watch. So let's dive into it. Before we get into it this week, though, Dave, any recap? How did we do last week?
Yes. Sorry. I had to watch it. One of the best things we did last week, and obviously, we were on it. We identified really good pricing situations, and the best one we hit on was Puka. I mean, we were all over this guy. I mean, he was 46K last week, and drops almost a 10x at 44-1. We knew this was just it was a matter of time. We did it earlier with Brock Bowers. I thought that was really, really good. And then we were back on it in some other really good areas too. Judkins, once again, it's been your boy, my boy. He just seems to be the better of the running backs. I know Evans still got some good points. And we did highlight a few others. Quentin Johnson, back at it again with a 35+. So we had some really good picks last week, I thought.
And we had a lot of learnings. Like we were already starting to see it, but now I'm willing to commit to basically play the passing game against Oklahoma State every week. That's like our new Michigan State. They can't stop anybody, and they have a great game script because they can move the ball. So it's always going to be a positive offensive flow and game script in those games. I'm starting to learn more and more teams that have good matchups every week. We want to target certain positions. So we'll go through that right now. We'll start with the first game of the week on the slate. It's going to be this Baylor and Kansas game. Kansas quarterback Jalen Daniels is still out, so we're going to get Jason Bean again. Anything you're interested in here on the Kansas side?
It's interesting. Baylor used to be one of those teams that you just say, no. Like they just play too slow and they play more of a defensive punch you in the mouth style. But West Virginia went in there and JT Daniels just smoked them the other Thursday night. I think 44-41, something in that range. And we've seen it even with BYU. Teams have been able to really, and Oklahoma State did it too. Teams have been able to expose Baylor and play them faster. So it gets me to the point. I think Kansas can do that. I think Bean is in my 7,300 is nice. Look, the highest priced quarterback on the slate is awful. Like Bo Nix at 93. I can't, it blows my mind. I can go 2,000 lefts with Bean. I think Bean is in my player pool. Not sure how heavy I'll go into the running game, but I'll focus on Bean and a couple pass catchers. Grimm let us down last week, but I think you could still go Arnold and Fairchild.
Yeah, I think Fairchild's my favorite play. They seem to be getting him more involved. I think Bean might even like him more. Bean's been throwing to him. He gets a lot of touchdowns. I look for him in the red zone at 3,700. It's less of a risk because you're not using too much salary on him. And I think Bean's interesting as well, just because his Baylor defense has been so bad recently. The last 2 weeks, they've given up 80-something points.
Yeah.
So they look susceptible. They weren't that bad all year. Something has changed where they've just been getting exploited. But I also don't think Bean's as good as Daniels, and I don't think he's not a lock for me either. On the Baylor side, the strength of this Kansas defense is the run D. So I don't want to target this run game. I think they can stop the run. If you want to target some of these Baylor pass catchers, I'd be okay with it. But they do spread it out. Baldwin is just priced too high to be considered. He's not that good to pay that much for. So if you want to look down, maybe at Holmes at 4,900, and I want to get exposure to this passing game, you can. But I'd be okay with fading this game for the most part as well.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Sims is a guy I like, but I need Shapen to definitely be playing. Sims is a very good NFL style tight end. 46 though, we've seen tight ends like we said, Fairchild 37 might be a little much too. So I don't disagree with you. I like the Kansas passing game, and I'm not in love with anything Baylor.
I'm with you. Baylor does spread it out a lot, so it's hard. They don't have a condensed target shares or anything like that.
Yeah.
We'll move over to the Syracuse-Clemson game. Like I said before, I think this is going to be a really entertaining game. I'm excited to watch it. But for DFS purposes, not great. This Clemson defense is really strong. I love Tucker and Schrader, but this is probably not the spot where they're my preference because Clemson is tough up front. And I think if in a perfect world for Syracuse, this is a low scoring, slow it down game where they maybe can win like a set 21-14 game or something like that. So if they do that, it just doesn't make sense that there's not too many guys here to target.
Yeah, so I'm going to go off script a little bit. I saw Clemson led up 28 to Florida State last week, 20 to NC State, 40 plus to Wake Forest. It's 3 to BC, but I think if I completely if I play this game, I think I'm off script, and I think I can actually take advantage of some of the plays. So I'm actually going to sneak in here. Tucker at 69. I know Clemson's good. I get it. But I think there's a chance to get a little bit of value there in Tucker and even Gadsden. They've not been great at tall receivers. They've been actually pretty bad. So I like those two. And on the other side, it's tricky because I'm with you. I can get some Shipley. I'm not sure I'm in Ulangalele, but I might play a little bit of it.
And actually, now that you said it, I think that the one guy I do like in this game is Gadsden. Gadsden looks like he's a star. Gadsden's now become their go-to guy. So I probably will play some Gadsden. Him will be someone who I'll look to target as well. All right, let's keep this moving to. This is the one that I don't know what to do with.
I think that's a good spot.
The Ohio State-Iowa game is interesting because this Iowa D is known to be treacherous. I don't think they're quite as good this year as they normally are. They're still very good, but maybe not as elite as they normally are. But this Ohio State offense is unbelievable. And they got 3 NFL receivers, an NFL quarterback. I don't see anybody slowing them down. But they're also priced up. And so do you want to pay the premium price against one of the better defenses in the country? The way I'm going is I'm going to fade the Ohio State running game because I think that's the Iowa strength. But I do think I'm going to play the receivers in the passing game because I just don't see anyone being able to stop this offense with these weapons.
I like that attack. On the Ohio State side, Igbuka obviously looks good. Fleming, I would play those before I spend up to Harrison. And listen, if Smith and Jigba plays, that changes probably where I'm going to go with the Ohio State receivers, and I might just go him alone with Stroud. But we'll see. I'm with you. I'll fade the running game, and then nothing on Iowa.
Yeah, I mean. Maybe if you want to throw a Hail Mary dart on one of these super cheap receivers to pair with the Ohio State game, maybe, but that's a real Hail Mary just trying to get exposure to this game. I would agree. It's probably going to be very low ownership with that.
Yeah, I guess Laporta, like at tight end, maybe, right? Just to
just
keep a little pace.
He's so cheap, and if you figure if they score 40 points, they're going to just have to throw, so he's going to get a lot of targets, right? That's just my thought. And at 3,400, it's cheap enough to maybe take a shot on it.
Yep. I'm with you.
All right, let's keep this moving over to this Cincinnati SMU game. We gotta know more about these injuries before we can really take a stance on this game because if Ben Bryant plays, it makes Cincinnati offense really interesting. Without Ben Bryant, I would love McClellan. I'll go to the running game, but I probably won't be as interested in the passing game.
I agree, and with Scott questionable too. I feel like this is a game that they're going to play, but I've been looking at some of the news, and they're leaning towards playing. But right now, we got to look at more. It'd be great. Oh, look at this. Josh checking in 16 targets last week. Laporta. Yeah. So absolutely.
What do you do with those 16 targets? Yeah, he had a monster game. I mean, I think he did have maybe he had a decent week last week, but he hasn't had a great game all year.
Yeah, and so he ended up with 22 points, 100 yards, 9 catches. So, solid game. So, yeah, we could go back there. But, yeah, got to see more from Cincy. But McClellan will be an absolute smash if we have injuries in the other places. I agree with you.
For sure. And now on the SMU side, anyone you're interested in here?
Well, listen, Mordecai can sling it, right? And I do like that fact that he's, they're taking the Sonny Dyke style and still continuing with it. I could get myself in with a little bit of a Mordecai. I think he's well priced in this game, and a game that he might have to throw a lot. And Rashee Rice is one of the best receivers in the league. Since he's tough, but they lost a lot in the backfield, so I think I could see myself pairing up Mordecai and Rice just to try and get some garbage, backdoor points late in the game.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm with you. I think the Cincinnati defense is pretty solid, but this is a pretty explosive SMU offense. Rasheed Rice is one of the best playmakers in the country. So, you're paying up for him. I don't really love or hate him, right? Like I'll probably play a little bit of him. I won't be overexposed. But I think he's in play for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move over to this Notre Dame UNLV game. UNLV's defense is nothing to be scared of.
Right.
I think this Notre Dame offense should do well. The problem with Notre Dame right now is they're playing 3 running backs. So there's just carries being split, and it's hard to play a backfield that has 3 guys sharing carries. It's just too many carries being shared. I think someone will have a good game. Yeah, guess between which one of the 3, which makes it extremely difficult. The player to own on Notre Dame, as we've been saying almost every week, is Michael Mayer. They
Right,
still
and he's still fair. Yeah.
More than fair, underpriced.
Yeah.
Underpriced. He's their best player. In my opinion, he should be in the 6Ks at least, and have him at 5K flat. I'm happy to play him here.
I agree. I think he's UNLV. It's one of the first times we've seen them on this main slate this year. But one thing we know, they don't play very good defense, like you said. And Meyer's just been awesome, right? Like I'm looking at his recent what do we have? We had 14. Oh, no, I'm looking at Estime. Estime I do like as well, but like you said, it's just hard. Like he's averaged 20 in his past 4, but it's hard relying on that running game right now. But, Meyer 7, 11, 5, and all these games are over, 11 points. He's probably more on the side of 25 a game. So I think he's almost a smash at 5K.
I agree. I will. The only thing I'm really concerned about with Meyer is his ownership, because I think other people are going to see that. It seems obvious, but if he stays around 20 or lower, then it's a smash play for sure.
But it's like Puka last week, right? Like 4,600 gets you 44 points. Even if he was 20%, you had to have that. Like, So, I'm okay playing like high owners, 1 or 2 of them. Yep. And I think you are too. You got to stay with the pace and be off script on the others. But totally I'm okay if he's 15, 20%. I'll be all right.
Totally agree. I totally agree. What about on the UNLV side? Is there anyone here you're looking at?
There's not. I mean, I do know they have a decent receivers, and I was looking, but Notre Dame has been pretty solid, and they've kept games probably in the 40s, low 50s. They held down BYU's passing game the other week. So I'm probably off most UNLV. How about you?
Yeah, I'm with you. I just think this Notre Dame defense is, they're not as great as they used to be, but they're still a good D. Probably one of the better defenses UNLV team is going to face all year. This doesn't seem like a smash spot for any of these guys, and they're not priced down where you're getting a discount on any of them. So I'm probably going to fade this UNLV team.
I agree.
All right, now let's look at this West Virginia Texas Tech game. This game could be very explosive. So this is a good game environment. In your builds this week, this can go 2 ways. You can build in a way where you just target this game as being the high score game of the week and go all in. Totally get that. You can also completely fade the game, go the other way. So it's like, the way college football is, you have your options. If you want to target this game, I'm totally fine with that. Both teams have shown they have some explosion to them. I'm going to start on the West Virginia side, mainly just because they have one of my favorite players in freshman CJ Donaldson, who looks just every time he touches the ball, you can take it to the house. Now, he had a concussion last week. Tony Mathis got all the carries, and he played great. But I think if anyone's been following this team all year, it's hard to imagine that Donaldson doesn't get the job back and get fed the ball, because he just looks unbelievable. He's so explosive. And at 5,100, he's more than affordable. So I'm going to be targeting Donaldson for sure on the West Virginia side. And on the Texas Tech side, it sounds like Morton's starting again. Obviously,
I love it. He's
not the minimum price anymore, but
still.
But if he's going to throw almost 50 times, then that's, he's obviously got to be someone you consider, because that's just a ridiculous amount of volume.
Yeah, he just and he just impressed me so much. I know it was a tough game environment for him to come in last second. Donovan Smith is out, but he showed some toughness. He was limping on the sideline late in the game, but he didn't care. He would still sling it. And this is the kind of guy I want, not only on my team, but in my DFS lineup. It'll be interesting because they throw it to so many people, but Fuanji has been a guy that 3,500. I know he hasn't overperformed this year, but it just really looks like a situation for me that I'm going to, maybe take a risk on, but Bradley as well. In the one game that Morton did play, 28.9 points, 8 for 119. 4,500 is underpriced. So Bradley's probably my favorite of these, and I'll take a high flyer on Fuanji.
I like that. The other thing I'll mention is looked like Roderick Thomas got to be the bell cow last week.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to be the case again. If it is at 4,700 in a game that's going to be in the positive game spread, that's too cheap. I would love him. Now it's a question mark because he could split carries. It could go back to Brooks. It's a real big question mark there. But if he does get the bell cow carries again, then that's just a smash spot price for him.
Yeah, agree. I mean, on West Virginia, Ford Wheaton has always been he's been very solid. And Texas Tech has just been involved in a lot of these, high scoring pass affairs. And we saw Oklahoma State really exploit them. So Ford Wheaton 71 isn't bad for a number one that gets high volume.
Totally agree. I totally agree. And Ford Wheaton's explosive. I like Ford Wheaton, especially Ford Wheaton's a play for me, where if you're targeting this game heavily, then he's definitely there. I don't really like him as a one-off play just because he's so expensive.
Yeah.
That I have to see this game going really high. If he does, then he makes sense.
Yep.
All right, let's look into these afternoon games. We'll go to this LSU Ole Miss game. Both these offenses have looked, at least LSU last week looked really explosive. Maybe not all year, but they came around last week. Ole Miss has looked good on offense. They have 2 NFL running backs. Jackson Dart looks like he can run for 100 yards in a given week. This is an explosive. These are 2 explosive teams. This game is another one that can go either way. It can be a shootout, but it is 2 SEC defenses that are a little bit different. They could slow each other down. So I kind of have the same sentiment here as I could either go all in on the game or maybe just play one player.
Yeah, I'm big on Jackson Dart. I played him a little bit last week. I think he might have thrown for. Let me look at his numbers because it wasn't good, but he still produced because of just like you said earlier, his legs. Right, he threw for 9 for 19, 130, but ran for 115 yards. Still puts up 30 plus in a game that versus Auburn, they probably needed all that. It was a little closer than they probably anticipated. They had a closer game against Vandy the week before. They had a closer game. They're playing a lot of games close, which to me is an advantage to use a guy at 6,700 that could rush for 100 yards and throw for 3. So I really like Jackson Dart. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks on the whole slate. On the other side, you're right. I mean, we've seen a little bit more from LSU. I could get myself, but Ole Miss, they're decent in the rush defense, so I would get more on the quarterback, wide receiver combos.
For sure. Yeah, I would agree with that. The one thing that's hard with Ole Miss right now is as good as both backs are, they're still sharing, right? And neither guy's likely to get. I mean, I guess they ran the ball a lot last week, but it's hard to imagine that ceiling 30 carries because there's 2 of them that's got to get them. So they're both awesome, but they share carries, which makes it challenging. I'm not sure if this is the best running matchup, but on the other side, Josh Williams is the back for LSU, and he's the minimum price.
Yeah,
so that's
crazy. Good point.
It's not the best matchup in the world, but the minimum price is the minimum price for a starting running back in a high-scoring game. So if you need to go budget diving for a back, he could make sense.
Great point there. I like that call. And looking at Mingo, just be careful. I mean, puts up that huge game, then nothing last week. I saw him even drop a ball. So I just don't know what to do there with Mingo. It's like he's been absolutely all or nothing.
I think the problem with Mingo, it's not him, it's the passing. I mean, this team's going to run the ball 60 times.
Yeah.
So if they're not going to be dropping back, he just doesn't get that many looks. He did drop a pass or 2, but the volume just doesn't seem to be there for this passing game right now.
And I'm okay missing, right? Mingo puts up that 40-point game one week. Every other game has been about 10 or 11, some under that. I'll just play. I'm not going to play him, and if he beats me, he beats me. That's where I'm at with Mingo.
I think I'm with you, especially against this LSU team that's a little bit more talented. So it doesn't seem like a real smash spot for him. The other guy I do want to mention is Bout, who looked
I like him.
He's an NFL talent. He looked like he's starting to come around. They're getting him the ball more. 5,300. If this becomes a shootout, I think this is a good spot for him.
Yeah, he's been severely underpriced all year, and I guess it's part of the they just haven't been successful. But I mean, he can play, and we know what LSU receivers are. I mean, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. He's kind of in that same ilk as all of them. So I'm willing to play him this week for sure.
The sad part for him is that he just doesn't get Joe Burrow, and then you're not going to get the same passes from Jalen Daniels, and I think that is what's holding him back. But they're going to get him more and more involved as the year goes on.
Yep.
All right, let's look at this UCLA Oregon game. This is one I like. I just think this is going to be a premier game. Both of these defenses aren't bad. It's not like a great spot, but to me, I don't know why. Maybe it's just I just got a feeling this is going to be an exciting kind of explosive game. And I like you said before, listen, Bo Nix on paper has done it this year. Every week he's gone over 30 points, I think. He was ready to write it. They give him like the goal line carry. So he's like a decent quarterback. And then he also rushes for 1 or 2 every week, which just boosts his stat line every week. To me, it's just not sustainable. I just can't imagine he's going to run for 2 touchdowns every week. That's got to come back down to earth. At 9,300, I just can't go there. I just can't. I can't do it.
I can't. And I mean, even if he gets that 30 to 35 point range at 93, that's not worth it for me. Right. And I know UCLA hasn't been great defensively, but in the end, I mean, this guy has recently, when he's been putting up his numbers, Arizona, Stanford, Washington State, BYU, who we see doesn't play much defense. It's been against teams that aren't great, but you get that one game against Georgia, that dud. And I know UCLA is not Georgia. It's just that's what he has in him. I can't pay 9,300. You make that 7,300, I'm playing. 93, I can't.
I'm with you. I have the same sentiment. It's too much. He has to be so great to pay out. It just doesn't make sense. So I'm with you there. But on the other side of the ball, DTR makes a lot of sense at 7,900.
I don't get it. Yeah, I would have flipped these 2 salaries. And I could have probably played both, but I can't. Like DTR, I might have thought of playing at 9,000. At 7,900, absolutely, I'm playing him. No doubt.
DTR is one of my favorite quarterbacks this week. I just think it's a more than fair price. He's going to run. He's going to throw. I'm going to pair him with Jake Bobo, who now they've featured. They've now made their go-to guy.
Absolutely.
Even though he's 6,800, I'm fine with rolling Bobo out against this Oregon team with DTR. And then if I don't play I don't want to play DTR and Charbonnet. I figure they eat into each other a little bit. But in lineups I don't play DTR, then I'll like Charbonnet as well.
I'm torn here because at 6,700, I think Charbonnet might be the best value on the board for a running back. This guy is just electric, averaging 27 DK points a game. Even recently in the bigger games against Washington, Utah, he's come to play, and so is DTR. So I'm torn and I agree, they cut into each other. Maybe I could get some Charbonnet and Bobo and leave DTR off, or I'll find a way to mix it. But all 3 are in play for me. I got to figure out how I'm going to strategize that. I'm with you.
Yeah, I think I play that way. I think you could play Charbonnet and Bobo or DTR and Bobo. I just in those lineups, I just want to separate DTR and Charbonnet. In cash, I'm okay with playing them together because you don't need the ceilings. I just think it's hard for all 3 of them to reach their ceilings in this game.
Agreed. I think that's a good strategy.
For sure. All right, let's keep this. Actually, is there anyone on the Oregon side you're looking at?
Not so much. The running back situation is a little skewed right now because you got an injury in the backfield. And I just, it's Caldwell going to play or Irving, and they kind of share it. Franklin, I like, but 7K feels like
too much.
I don't know. It feels like a lot for me.
Too much. The only guy I'd consider is maybe Terrence Ferguson, the tight end, but just because he's so cheap, he can catch a touchdown and pay off that value if you want to play someone with the UCLA side. But the problem with Oregon, I do think they'll score a lot. It's very spread out. They don't really condense the targets or the share to anyone, so it's hard to really narrow in on any one guy.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. How about this Texas-Oklahoma State game? Now, for fantasy purposes, I think this is going to be really interesting.
All in. Yep.
I love this game. And my first instinct play here is to go with the Texas pass game because they're going to go all in on stopping the run on Bijan, and they're going to probably have to open up the pass, and they can't stop the pass all year. They've just been horrible. And we've seen, we've seen Worthy have a couple explosive games. Whittington can make a few plays. I've called out Jatavion Sanders already this year at 3,700. I'm going to be in love with him in this spot. So I think the Texas passing game is one of my favorite plays of the week.
I agree. And Ewers is a great price. 6,400. You can spend 3,000 less on him than Knicks and get almost the same, right? So I love it. I'm with you. The passing game, I'm off Bijan. 94 is way too much on almost any week. He's got to play probably like let me think of a team out there. Like it's got to be someone horrible, right? And for me to pay 9,400 for Bijan. So I'm not doing it against OK State. But on the other side, I love OK State's passing game too. I think Sanders is well priced. 7,000 is very fair. I think for us to get him in there, averaging 33 DK points a game, 78 is great. I mean, it's interesting though. Is Johnson going to play this week? Because he's a guy I could really target in 67. We've brought him back down into a decent range, but he's just been off the past 2 weeks.
It depends on how healthy he is, right? I think he's probably, I don't think he's fully healthy. If he's fully healthy, this probably is a really good spot for him, but we just don't know what we're getting with him right now. At 6,700, it's a little risky, but he's definitely worth a flyer in some GPPs if you're playing him with Sanders, especially because he is the best playmaker on this team when they get going. And then if he doesn't play, the other issue with this team is they have like 5 guys that can really make plays. So you can play Sanders with any of them. They're all a little risky because they kind of eat into each other, but they all can go off. So, the guys I like the most are Johnson's the best.
Yes.
Preston's second best, but Preston doesn't have that high of a ceiling. 8 for 80 is what you get at 6,100. I'm not sure if that pays off. Bryson Green and Bray are the two that you're cheaper that can go off that are more risky if you wanted to give them a pair. But that's about it for this squad.
Yeah, agreed. And I think this is a good game stack. I mean, you talked about it earlier. This is one where you could see yourself playing 5 or 6 guys on a side.
For sure. Yeah, and I'll be looking into this game for sure. Let's take a look at the Wake Forest BC game. I actually think this game is interesting. I think this will be the game that I might be a little overweight on, thinking that it'll be different because it won't be a high ownership. And we know Sam Hartman, one of the best players in the country. He could win the Heisman. 8,900 is expensive, but he deserves it. He's great. He slows down a little bit the last 2 weeks, but this Boston College team is not scary at all. He should do what he wants against them. The Perry and Banks are the 2 guys that he goes to the most. Feel free to play them. And I love pairing them with Zay Flowers here because this BC team is going to have to keep up scoring. Zay Flowers is an NFL talent. He's their best player. They feed him the ball at 5,900. I think he's underpriced in this spot.
I agree with everything you said. I think this is a game you could get really creative with. I think you can get some sneaky points. And I would even consider Jerkovich in this. 5,600. The guy's been, not good this year. I get it. But we've had some instances where we've highlighted guys not good and then finally had their breakout. Jerkovich is one at 5,600. I could get sneaky with. I won't probably pair him with a lot of pieces on Boston College and just hope he spreads it around. But I could get him in my super flex with the way that Wake Forest likes to play.
Yeah, and we've seen Jerkovich in the past have some ceiling games where he runs one in, he throws for 300. He can do that. So if this is a spot where Wake Forest gets scores every time, they have to keep up. This could be a sneaky spot for Jerkovich to finally have one of those games this year.
Yeah, and they've talked NFL talent. I mean, he does have NFL talent. So yep.
Well, this Purdue Wisconsin game is not a good formula for fantasy purposes. Wisconsin wants to play slow and play defense. This Purdue defense is really good at stopping the run, and you want to target Wisconsin's running game with Braylon Allen. This is not the week to go against this Purdue defense. So I'm off Allen. If anything, I maybe go DK because they throw to him every time, and I think that Purdue will be able to stop the run. So they'll have to get some production somewhere. So I'm okay with DK. And then on the other side of the Purdue side, I normally love Aiden Connell and this offense, but this isn't this isn't the best Wisconsin defense they've ever had, but it just doesn't seem like a spot where he's going to go off and have 350 and 4 touchdowns. So, I might play a few shares, but I'm not going to be overly exposed.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm a big Charlie Jones guy, but 7,800, we're starting to catch up to a point that I'm just not interested. It's just, there's a bunch of other guys on this team that I just think they spread the ball around to. And we've talked about him before. Durham could be one of those guys. But other than that, like, I think this game script is just, it's in the 20s, and 20s isn't enough for me to win a DFS game. So I'm probably off a lot of this. Braylon Allen, like you said, 7,400, he's come back down a little bit to a good area, but Purdue, they shut down Tucker. They've shut down good running games this year. Not interested.
I agree. Not the spot for Allen this week, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right. How about this Memphis Tulane game? Now, these are two very interesting teams from a DFS perspective who, for the most part, haven't been on the main slate this year. They've played just, night games or what have you. I've played a few of these guys, but the first time we're getting them on the main slate, I think, maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think Tulane was on it.
I think you're right.
But it's a good DFS spot. This should be a high-scoring game. Who do you like here in this game, Dave?
My favorite is probably looking at the Green Wave. I think getting a little bit more Pratt involved than Hennigan. It's a tad cheaper, but I just think he's going against the easier of the defenses. So I kind of want to attack Tulane a little bit. Listen, there's nothing in the Memphis running game that I like. So if we're going to stick with Memphis, we're going to try and sling the ball around. But Tulane's the same way. I think we got some cheap receivers. I think Watts is solid. I think Jackson's solid. I'm probably not going to be heavy on this game, but I'm going to play it a little bit because people are going to be off it for sure.
Yeah, I would agree. I like Pratt a lot. I think they spread the ball around too much, so it's hard to narrow in on one of the receivers, but I think Pratt can get there just spreading it out. You don't need to pair him with anyone. I do see this game scoring a lot, and the guys are affordable, but there's a lot of target shares that spread, so it's hard to zone in on one or two plays. So pick your spots if you want to go here. You also don't have to.
Sorry, double play. Just had to pump my
All
fist.
Right. Well, give us an update. What's the score?
We're 3-2 going into the bottom six. So
all
that
right.
was big.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Well, last game here, the 4:00 Stanford Arizona State game. Again, this is another one. This Arizona State team is not very good. Xavier Valadez, their bell cow back. I like him a lot. He is someone I will play at 6,600. He's affordable. He's probably my favorite play in this game. Other than that, on the Arizona State side, I'm not too interested. How about you, Dave?
I'm 100%. I think he is a great target in this game. But outside of that, I'm off the Arizona State. Like, it's so funny where Emory Jones has fallen. Like, I get to watch the Florida games, and he was their guy, and he's just fallen off a cliff, and he's in pretty much purgatory. So I'm off him. It's just the running game in Arizona State.
I totally agree. I guess you could consider Filkins 5,800. They do feed him the ball. I think almost 30 carries or something crazy last week. So I could consider him at 5,800. And the only other guy I could even mention here is probably Jurasek, the tight end for Stanford, because he is the bare minimum and he is involved in this offense. He gets 5-6 targets a game. He scores a touchdown. He can pay off minimum value.
I like that. And I also would consider Higgins at 4,400. I mean, he's got 19 catches in the last 4 games. I think it's 25 targets. So, and I think their stud receiver is out this week. So I could see myself maybe getting Higgins as well at 4,400. Yeah, it looks like Wilson's out. So yeah, I'm with you on the tight end and maybe a little bit of action there on the back end too.
There it is. That's a wrap for this week. The moral of the story for this week is have some conviction on the games you want to target. If you nail the super high scoring games, you'll have some success this week. That's the play. Just find those game environments that you like, go after them, and good luck. Any last words for us, Dave?
No, I agree. Like last week, we kind of were like, we weren't sure in the Alabama-Tennessee, but we played a little bit of it, and that ended up being that game, right? So I'll also stress there's going to be a couple games out there that we're not 100% sure about. They're kind of off the script. Don't always go with the highest scoring. And Joel's in it. He's in it with the Wake Forest BC game a little bit. There's some out there, and I'm in it a little bit in the Clemson-Syracuse game. I think that can be paced up. So in GPPs, try and catch a couple off the script is what I would say this week. I see a few that could really break.
Exactly. That's what makes you different. Dave, good luck to your Phillies tonight. Enjoy the rest of the game. And good luck tomorrow, guys. Well, report back next week. Let us know how you did. And good luck.